Welcome to the Artful Teaching Podcast, where teachers are brought out of isolation and into conversation.
Here, we spotlight professional educators as both artists and leaders, and examine how the arts deepen student learning and improve school culture.
Education is a demanding field, and we've seen teachers rise to the challenges of their profession by leveraging the arts in the classroom.
Integrating dance, drama, music, visual arts, and media arts can bring so much joy, and we're excited to share that with you.
We're your hosts, Flox
and Heather Francis.
Thanks for joining us to hear various perspectives on the art of teaching.
All right, let's get started. It is the recap of our second series, Resilience for Teachers. And I'm Heather Francis, here with my co-host, Flox. And today we're going to be talking about, of course, resilience and what we've learned about resilience now at this point.
So what we know about resilience, we've all had a shared experience over the last year. We all now know what sheltering in place means and mask wearing and social distancing, and we all experienced a huge life change and endured together a stress and learned how to support each other, support ourselves, and how to survive.
Yeah, I was looking at some research today and saw a comment made in an article that said the public health crisis has created the perfect storm for mental health disaster in the United States. So resilience has been something I think everyone has considered, thought about, practiced, and made a part of their daily life to survive.
And I'll tell you, the biggest anxiety attack I had was when March hit and I realized, we're going to go back to normal. Oh my gosh, I don't want my old life back. I don't want things back to normal. I don't want the traffic back. I don't want the commute back. I don't want the business. I don't want the schedule. And I really started appreciating some of the things that I've added to my life that were essential and necessary to survive during a difficult year when things were changing so quickly that we were continually improvising just to keep up. So things like cooking at home, cooking from scratch. I baked bread for the first time in so many years, and I enjoyed the taste and the flavor of the food because I spent more time and energy on my food because I couldn't go out and buy things, and I don't want to lose that.
I know. I've so enjoyed family dinner time at 6 o'clock every night. I mean, the fact that my family has a routine is, I never thought I would enjoy that. It felt so, school time was already so scheduled for me. And so coming home and just having no time schedule. But during the pandemic, my family found a routine, and knowing that I was going to eat dinner at 6 o'clock every night felt so safe.
And that a traffic jam on the freeway couldn't change your dinner time because you weren't commuting and driving anywhere. You were already all home. What a novel idea.
I got 10 hours of my life back because I wasn't commuting. So instead of sitting in a car, I was moving my body. And I think that actually felt so liberating and really wonderful.
Yeah, 10 hours a week of change. And the other thing for me, because I lived in my house and I would get antsy, my closets are clean. I threw things away. Now, it was hard to figure out where to throw them because, people with taking secondhand things, it was hard to pass them on. But we found ways. But my home is more organized. I dejunked, I decluttered, and things are much simpler.
Mm-hmm. And cognitive load is one of those things that we experience and can be a stress when we have so many things or so many untidy spaces or so much curriculum to teach. If we're talking about teachers, the cognitive load, especially during a year with a health crisis, a pandemic, there's so much to manage. Being able to do some spring cleaning over an entire 4 seasons is helpful.
It is helpful. Well, I think of when the governor first announced that schools were going to be closed, and the teachers, the cognitive load on, oh my goodness, I have to learn all of this technology. I have to learn how to reach kids. I have to rebuild relationships. They had to learn so many new skills, tools, tricks of the trade. They had to find new things, new ways. They had to let go of everything and find a new way. That cognitive load was huge. And then they go back to the classroom and they had to manage every classroom routine differently, with social distancing, with plexiglass, with cleaning, with managing supplies and passing out papers. That cognitive load, when you're trying to manage a child's safety, your mother's safety, your children's safety, and you're trying to manage all of that at the same time, trying to track who touched which pencil last and which bucket of paintbrushes has to be cleaned or sterilized. And that kind of cognitive load is not doable. It's unbelievably complicated and difficult. And yeah, people were exhausted. And yet there were these other parts of our lives that were just simpler. And we had to just go back to what's the easiest way to do this? What's essential? And one of the things I learned is that touching people and hugging people is essential. And I'm so grateful that we're moving forward with people vaccinated and things are returning to that part of familiarity that I missed a lot.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened to the episode Kelly and I recorded earlier in the series on touch, we go more in depth on how important touch is and what it means in our lives and our relationships and how it helps us practice resilience and bouncing back from challenges in our life. I'm going to take away from the pandemic something movement, because like I said, eliminating the car driving really allowed me to move more in my life. And I got to take walks with my baby in a stroller. And I thought as a working mother that I wasn't going to get more than a Sunday afternoon walk. And we took so many walks, and that physical release and walking a lot more felt really good. And I was reading again this morning some research that said teachers during the pandemic expressed how physical activity helped them manage their mental health. And they also found from interviewing teachers that it didn't matter the intensity of movement or activity, just that it happened. That when you add movement into your life, you're practicing resilience because you're managing the energy and the body that you live in. That's your instrument for living, like you always say. So I think that these activities you did in your resilience workshop and that you described in this podcast, I want to keep doing things like that, like shaking, like doing a body scan, meditation, yoga, posturing, all those things. Adding activity to my life will be something I keep.
The body is the primary instrument for living, and our brain doesn't exist just in our heads. The anatomical brain does, but the neurological system extends down to the tips of our fingers and the ends of our toes. And our body does more than just carry our head around. Sometimes we get into life and we assume that what makes us different than other animals is just what's up in our head. But how our neurophysiology works through our entire body and how we respond to that is part of our intelligence as human beings. It's part of how we exist in the world. And anything we learn under stress, we recall under stress. Once those neural pathways are laid down, if you do that skill again, you're going to remember it through those same neural pathways that you learned it through. So part of our life right now is releasing the stress in our bodies of when we had too much cognitive load to survive some of these stresses. We need to dance a new dance, find a new way, and lay down some new neural pathways that are relaxed and joyful, that integrate the things we've learned, but also release the stress that we had to learn them with.
So you say that what is learned under stress will be remembered with stress. So this pandemic was stressful, and I will always remember that stress. But because of the ways that I was taught to manage my stress and to practice resilience, I won't remember a pandemic as only stressful. It's something I can manage, and I can transfer that and apply it to all other challenges in life, whether it's as a teacher, as an administrator, as a community member, as a parent. There are ways to be resilient in large challenges like a pandemic.
Yeah, that's really true. I know for me, I have adult children living out of state. So during the pandemic without travel, we had family Zoom meetings on Sunday, and it changed our relationships. One of the decisions I made was that my dog was going to take me for a walk every day, whether I wanted or not, but I had to decide how I was going to do that. So I decided there is no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. And it didn't matter.
You learned it from Lois.
I did. I learned it from Lois. I had decided that it didn't matter what the weather was like. My dog was going to take me for a walk every single day. And just that type of resilience, that the weather doesn't change what I do, I'll keep that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, you have choice in different circumstances, even if you can't change the circumstance.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier this morning about the suicide rate and the claims that a pandemic has increased suicide rate in this country. But
when we looked it up, what did we find? That wasn't true. that there is no data that the suicide rates have gone up.
I think we even read that there was a post on social media that said suicide rates have gone up 200% and was reposted 31,000 times before it was taken down by fact checkers. So even though the data doesn't show that there's an increase in suicide, we've all experienced increased stress and examples of major anxiety and depression. But this article also offered some interesting information about what we may have gained as a society that could have protected us from an increase in suicide during a pandemic. Maybe there's a correlation to this, but the attention to mental health, the attention to resilience, the need of every person on the globe to say, how am I going to approach this? And how am I going to survive? And how am I going to do my job? And how am I going to take care of my family? There's been a lot more conversation, it seems, especially in my circles, on mental health.
Yes. We've reached out to each other. That's part of what this resilience class was how do we reach out and support each other and help each other get through something. And that's what people are supposed to do. You know, Heather, you and I are both fans of Margaret Wheatley's book, Turning to One Another. Mm-hmm. And her biggest principle is when the institutions fail you, when the world is falling apart, everything's coming down. What do? We turn to one another and we find the truth and the principles in the people around us, and it reflects those beautiful parts of us, and we find ourselves again, and we go inward in order to exude new strength outward.
I love that. And yes, I love Margaret Wheatley's book. In fact, when I pulled up in your driveway this morning, that title of her book, Turning to One Another, just popped into my mind. I love the sense of belonging when we meet with teachers and when I work with you, and that really helped me get through the pandemic.
And I watched in the resilience workshop, you know, every week there was a time that the teachers went into breakout rooms and talked to each other, and they turned to one another with their problems, with their challenges, and they cried together and they laughed together to feel the emotional support that coming together in community we can offer each other. So during a time of isolation, we find new ways to turn towards one another.
Yeah. And in our events, we have feedback forms, and teachers are always asking for more time to talk together. And so that's why we created this podcast, you know, help teachers go from isolation to conversation, to be able to talk together. I know it's you and I co-hosting, but we bring in, you know, teachers to interview them. We share ideas teachers are interested in. We share funny stories. We laugh, you know, we commiserate over the challenges together. And hopefully this podcast is providing some value for teachers, that they can feel that they're part of these conversations.
Yeah, I hope so too. We'll be looking for new ways for them to join us through forums and other types of conversations, and then many of the teachers come back and see us at our workshops and continue these relationships another way.
Okay, final word for this episode, Callie. How is resilience related to artful teaching?
The term artful is about being exceptional, and artful teaching has to do with bringing forward your best every day. And resilience is about putting your best foot forward every day, or knowing when to keep your best foot internally so that until you are restored with your energy to put your best foot forward. Resilience is a huge part of living artfully, teaching artfully, and what we wish everyone is an artful journey.
And before you go, I just wanted to let you know that Callie is doing this Resilience for Teachers workshop next fall. And if you would like to get details about that opportunity, any individual is welcome to join us. You can join our mailing list by emailing artspartnership@byu.edu, and we'll be happy to send you the details.
Artful Teaching is made possible by the BYU Arts Partnership in the McKay School of Education. Thanks to Montgomery Media Arts Institute for the production of this podcast. And special thanks to all the teachers who are changing lives while serving in schools.
If you like what you heard, please leave us a review. You can find all our episodes at advancingartsleadership.com. I'm Heather Francis.
And I'm Callie Flox, wishing you an artful journey.